Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Numi Talks. Today I have Geraldine Butler-Wright. Geraldine is a Chief People Officer. She is a leader and a team builder. Geraldine, we're going to talk about handling redundancies with empathy. We're going to talk about building teams, and we're going to talk about performance in those teams. I'm so excited to have you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. It's lovely to see you.
And you, after all of these years.
Yeah.
Would you go ahead and introduce yourself for the audience, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Geraldine Butler-Wright, or G for short, a little less formal and long. I'm a Chief People Officer by trade, and I help startups and scale-ups get the people part of their business right. So CEOs, founders, and their people can focus on other things like revenue generation, product market fit, investment. My background has been in the startup and scale-up space with FinTech, MarTech, HealthTech, global organisations, and also I've worked for larger companies such as PayPal, and also in my past I've worked for the US government. So quite a varied background.
Indeed, which gives you all of these experiences to share your wisdom. Well, let's dig in. Let's go straight into how to handle layoffs and redundancies with empathy. What's your best advice that you would give to those leaders and employers to have those conversations?
Certainly. So it's been very volatile for the last few years. You'd have to be living under a rock to realise that it hasn't been that way. And a lot of startups and scale-ups have had to, cut the cloth accordingly. And often headcount burn rate has been in the first and forward in people's minds and investors' minds. The most important thing is to realise that it is such a deeply human process. And it's very easy to get caught up in the legalities, which are important, and say, it's the role that's been made redundant, it's not you. There's a person in that role. And if there's one thing that somebody takes away from our conversation today, it's to remember you're dealing with human beings. Mm-hmm. So have a brain trust around you of your leadership team where you practice what you're going to say and see how it's going to land on a human being, and realise the impact that it's going to have on that individual and also their family, their life. Mm-hmm. So keep that front of mind.
Do you coach those leaders with those empathetic skills and those understandings? Because each person's quite different in their profile. How do you what are the things that you can do to help?
Yes, certainly. So it's practice. So it's being very intentional about what is going to be said in those all hands that notify the whole company of what's happening, those one-to-one conversations with individuals, and with those leaders who may have brought in their friends to that organisation, and they're having to have a really hard conversation about the relationship, that working relationship, coming to an end and a completely different dynamic to their friendship moving forward. So yes, very intentional. We go through what's going to be said. We practice it. We try to emphasize different terminologies that we can use to make it feel authentic and human.
Yeah, I think that's key. Thank you for sharing that. There's certainly an art in which a conversation can take place, even if it's a very tough conversation, where there is some grace in that dialogue.
Absolutely. Grace and elegance, and thinking about the long term as well. It doesn't have to be the end. When I think about some of the proudest moments of my career, it's been when we have gone through the hard times as a company, and you fast forward 2-3 years and you're all meeting up for a drink because the culture was so great and the memories were so great, and albeit the working relationship had to change, it was done so well that nobody was left with PTSD from the experience. Yeah. Everybody could move on with their life in a happy and graceful manner.
Yeah. How does it change if it's a small to medium-sized business versus a larger company? What happens there?
I think with a larger company, obviously there are the logistics that can come in the way in many ways because you are doing a massive restructure at scale. Regardless, the same principles apply. You treat people in a deeply human way. You don't want it to feel like a sausage factory where it's okay next. That's not going to win the moment, and certainly, in the long run, that will have a very negative impact on your company. So really, I think there's very little difference. There should not be, I should say.
Okay. Well, we have been, like you said, unless you've been living under a rock, we've been in troubled waters recently with some macroeconomic climate that has affected these employers, certainly in technology, where there have been these layoffs and cutbacks and redundancies. So thank you for advising your partner portfolio on how to handle those conversations gracefully. Let's change tack a little bit. Let's talk about career pathways and growth. Because that's obviously equally important, and we love to see success stories where people are moving through the gears in their careers. But again, in this startup, characteristically volatile environment, what are the tips and advice that you can give to a person to be successful in their career path in a startup?
It's be very intentional about your career, and to work out how your skills and abilities can match the business goals of the organisation. So those people who I've seen be very successful within the world and startups and scale-ups, they've got close to the business. They've understood what problems need to be solved and have been very active in helping find solutions to those problems. And they've very much been in control of how they are managing their career. They also make the time to look outside of the immediate fire drill. We've got to get this sorted out. They see longer term. They're excellent at building relationships within the organisation. And also looking outside of that, they're very good at building networks. They go to different events. They go to mixers. They speak at different events that are relevant to their field. So they become known within that environment, and therefore it does future-proof them as well for when perhaps that organisation isn't right for them. They've got lots of other opportunities that come knocking on their door rather than having to search per se.
Yeah, that's amazing. Does somebody spring to mind where you remember a particular individual that really flourished, and what it was that that person had that enabled that?
Yes, I do. Product leader, now a head of, and they have 10 years experience. They have moved very, very quickly through the ranks, technically minded, so from a data background initially, and then moved into product, got very close to the business, close to the leadership team, knew what their pain points were, and the wonderful phrase, eat the frog.
Oh, I love that phrase. Do that thing in the morning.
Yeah, do that thing in the morning. They knew what needed to be done, and they did it.
Yeah.
And they came with solutions, and there was no whinging about, I don't like this. Well, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And they got on with it.
Yeah.
And that visibility really helped them to progress. And also, I think they managed their expectations. There was a brilliant report that came out recently saying that those with low expectations have high resilience. So this individual in particular had quite low expectations of, what was going to happen. Are we going to suddenly, rocket fuel into becoming a unicorn? Maybe we were, maybe they weren't. They were focusing on what needed to be delivered, and very, very strategically in that time. So, and they were very resilient as well. So they had very realistic expectations of what the employment relationship was, what they could get out of the company, what they could give to the company, and it served them very well.
And was there? I hear people talk about bringing their whole self to work. I hear people being vulnerable and bringing humility. Did you see that in that person? Would you say those characteristics are important?
Yes, I think so. I think it is important to be your authentic self. I also think there's a time and a place, because many organisations are not social enterprises.
Correct.
They are a profit profit-making, or you hope to be a profit-making organisation. So absolutely be real to yourself. I absolutely agree in that. But there's also a time where you just have to get on with the job and have that as the focus.
Yeah.
And get the support outside of the organisation to help you move through any difficulties as well that you might be encountering. So, fit the oxygen mask as well outside.
Yes. And is this outside the organisation? Is this your friendship group or your family and your peer group? Are you referring to that?
So, and coaches, get a professional coach, get a therapist. Look after yourself. Go, if yoga or running or boxing or whatever it is works for you, look after your mental health. And so when you're in the office, you can virtually or in person, you can focus on what needs to be done, but do look after yourself.
I love that you raised that, and we weren't necessarily going to talk about mental health, but I think since the pandemic, maybe the taboo around mental health is being
wonderful
removed a little bit. What would you say about that? How encouraged are you to see that it's a good conversation to surface?
It's really refreshing to see, and also to see the shackles of shame around mental health going away. It affects so many people, forms of mental health concerns and issues, and it's good to be able to have those conversations and get it out there and say, look, I'm not feeling great today. This is what I'm going to do about it. Can you help me?
Yeah. Okay. Lovely. Okay. So from career pathways to team building, what would you say are some of the secrets that you've learnt that create a successfully high-performing team?
Clarity.
Okay.
So.
Show me.
So, as a business, know the direction you're going, or have a really good enough idea of where you're going. And I understand with product market fit, it can be something that has to be, explored, and sometimes people have to pivot. But as a leadership team, it is so important to provide that overarching vision for the company and make it as tight as possible. And then within the leadership team, distill that vision and mission and goals into something tangible for your team to deliver on. This is how it's relevant to you. This is why it should be important to you. And then from that, you can focus on delivering amazing work.
How do you, in practice, how does that actually happen? How do you break it down? And maybe you can share like one simple strategy for that, because you've got an incredible company vision and mission and strategy, and it's plastered over the wall right above the values. And then you've got OKRs, and then you've got team one-to-ones. Is there one simple strategy that brings the whole thing together that keeps the North Star?
It's ensuring that the communication is a two-way flow of what needs to be delivered, and also the practicalities of it actually being delivered as well. So not providing these goals in a vacuum. Have your weekly cadence. This is what we're focusing on this week at the beginning of the week. At the end of the week, this is what we achieved. What did we learn? The stop, start, continue model. What do we need to focus on Monday morning? So everybody's on the bus. Everybody knows the direction we're going. We're not working in silos. Just being really rigorous around that and working out which meetings actually are fruitful. If they don't work, scrap them. Do something that's going to work. But be very agile. Treat the way you go about people and organising your business as a product in and of itself. Is this working? Who subscribes to this way of working? If people don't, then you've got a broken product.
It must be really difficult when you're coaching a business where you're not a direct employee of that business, and you can observe maybe the inherent employees and their culture, and you can see those meetings happening, and you can see people that are not switched on, they're not on the bus. What do you do in that scenario?
Find out why. Ask them.
Just simple as that?
Ask them. 3 wonderful questions that work in so many situations. What's working well? What needs to be better? And have you got any advice for me?
Okay. I think our Graham will testify to that. Yeah. What do you love doing? What would you like to do more of? And what can I do to help? Yeah. Are some of the questions that we roll with.
It's so important, and it's really simple. You don't need huge scripts and question sheets and surveys of going deep into the multitude of questions that people disengage with after a minute. Get back to being human. Have a conversation with your team. Have one-to-ones. Cover these questions. Gather really rich data that will help inform the effectiveness of your company.
Okay. So we've been thinking about how to help people on their career pathways, how to gel people together, all seeing the North Star, highly performant teams, and even looking at some employees that were already in the business. But before we get to that stage, we interview and we select and we identify people. And you've been involved in a lot of that. We both love hiring. Yeah. We both love identifying talent. In your experiences, is there a question that is your favorite or your, the most useful question during an interview process? What would that be?
Yeah. What do you know about the company?
I'm not going to answer.
You'd be amazed at how many people don't know.
Yeah.
They rock up. And if somebody is fumbling on that question, that suggests to me that they need to get better at research skills, which are essential for any job, and preparation of how to handle themselves in a situation where they need to answer the question. Have you done your work? Do you know what you're talking about? And if they haven't done that basic level of research, I've called interviews to a close then and there.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I know we worked together many years ago when you were working at a tech startup that was a mobile phone product based. It was an app. And I can only imagine if somebody hadn't even used the app, you'd have just been like, your jaw would have dropped.
And it's your life. Why wouldn't you want to research the company you're going to work at? So minimum, you're going to be there 8 hours a day, right? That's a long time to spend your day in a company, in a place, and invest your precious time in something you don't really know about. Mm-hmm. So there's a judgment piece there that just gets under my skin, as you probably already gathered.
Yeah.
Do your research, people.
I know, yeah. Good advice. In that research, if you deconstruct it a little bit, would you break it down into the company's purpose, their balance sheet, or some information about their sales cycles, the culture and the values, the people? Would you just help to share with our audience?
Yeah, definitely.
What would those buckets be that you would expect somebody to have a level of research?
Yeah, definitely. So, have a look around the website, for sure. Mm-hmm. Learn what the main products are. Have some interesting questions of that core level of research, that isn't available on the website. So you're demonstrating that curiosity and engagement with the product, that interest with the product. Mm-hmm. Have a look in the news. Do a Google search under news of the company. Have a look at the financials that are available. Go on Companies House. See what their latest tax returns were. Yeah. Also from the culture perspective, have a look at Glassdoor, good old Glassdoor. Yeah. See there if there are any, flags. Have a conversation with the hiring manager, with the recruiter about them. So you're really getting you're making an informed decision about how you want to spend your life with this company.
Yeah, okay. I love that. And I also really like the question piece as well. It's so important for candidates to ask questions. Even if, do you agree with this? Even if the candidates ask questions that have been answered by the recruiter, or they've asked questions that have been answered in the first interview and they're in the second interview, and the hiring manager says, do you have any questions? To simply say, oh, nothing, I think it's just a bad sign. It's possibly better to say, I had these questions and they were answered really well, so I don't have anything else for now.
They could also say as well, to get a rounded view of the company and the people that work there. I've asked these questions before. I'm asking all my interviewers these questions, and I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yes, that's great. Okay. Now let's talk about the HR and the people part of the job function within a company. I've heard, because I'm not an HR professional, I've heard that it's hard to get a seat at the table to achieve the level that you've achieved. What would you say about that?
This drives me bonkers, this comment.
I was going to say my question.
Drive me bonkers, Mark. It drives me bonkers because, life's hard, right? Or it can be. You make your choices. It's on you to get invited to the table. It's on nobody else. You have to build your credibility, and you have to show that you are not only going to be invited to the room, you are essential in the room. How do you do that? You get close with the numbers. You get close with the business. You understand what the problem points are. Mm-hmm. You come with solutions. You come with ideas. You communicate well.
I need you as my boss, don't I? When I'm younger, I need to go back to that point. Let me ask you a question, right?
Yes.
In closing, as we're nearly out of time, what advice would you give to your younger self?
It's a tough one, this question. It's a tough one. Don't care about what other people think about you. I had imposter syndrome like many people do, especially when they're starting out in their career. And I was always worried about, what if I do this and what will they think, etc. I have no control over what other people think of me. Mm-hmm. That is their business. I needed to focus more on my future and what I was doing to secure that future. And also, it was unnecessary worry that was taking up bandwidth in my head. Mm-hmm. I didn't need. So, yeah.
I completely agree. And when I reflect and think about being younger, it's hard to know what you don't know. And it's hard to have that confidence to just roll with who you are as a person until you've kind of grown into yourself, which can take you until your 30s or 40s. I have these conversations myself. I have a 17, 21 and 23-year-old. So as a parent and an employer of those in the Gen Z category, it's a really interesting conversation. Do you actually have that kind of conversation at that level as well?
No, our children are 2 and 4, so I've got a while to go, and I need some tips for you on how to handle the later stage children. I think sometimes it's just a rite of passage.
Yeah,
you've just got to go through it. And no matter how much, I love coaching emerging talent, so people who are amazing individual contributors, absolutely superb. Suddenly they find that they've been promoted into a role because they're great ICs and they've got 10 direct reports and it's scaring them senseless. Talk about imposter syndrome. Talk about trying to get credibility with the seniors, delivering a job that they really, really loved and they're actually still expected to do on top of managing. And it's kind of it's growth pains. And it's realizing it's normal and nobody has been fitted with a microchip that makes them perfect.
True.
You've got to learn how to fail and how to rebound quickly.
Geraldine, this has been absolutely amazing.
Pleasure.
It's gone so quickly. But I've really loved talking about how to have those difficult redundancy or layoff conversations with empathy and grace, how to navigate your career path, how to build high-performing teams. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Pleasure. Absolutely delightful speaking with you.
Now, I'm sure you'll say yes, but are you happy for people to connect with you on LinkedIn and to reach out and share your advice?
100%. It would be my pleasure.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for staying with us today. Please subscribe to our channel. We have plenty more episodes on the way.